Hey everyone, Dr. Michael Breus, Sleep Doctor here, and welcome to the second installment of my book club. I'm here with two very old friends, Colleen and Jason. They started MindBodyGreen. I know everybody out there actually already knows about MindBodyGreen. If you don't, head over there and check it out. The information on that site is fantastic. I've been working with them for I don't know how long, and I love the fact that it's always about getting real information and practical information about what you want to learn about your health and what you want to do for yourself. And so I've always had tremendous respect for the two of you, and now I get to have the fun of talking to everybody about this amazing new book of yours. So number one, if you wouldn't mind telling my audience just a little bit of background about MindBodyGreen, why did you guys start it, and just how it's grown, and then a little bit about why you wanted to write a book.
Sure. So MindBodyGreen is coming up on its 15th anniversary.
Holy cow.
And yeah. And it came out of my personal pain, specifically in my lower back. If we rewind at that time, about 15 years ago, I was running another startup. The company was not doing well, and I was flying constantly. And my 6'7" frame in a coach seat, it's bad for everyone involved, especially my lower back. And that combined with, the stress, the compression that happens during flying, and an old basketball injury from college led to 2 extruded discs in my lower back, L4, L5, S1, an excruciating sciatica. My right leg was like a lightning rod. I could not walk without being in terrible pain, and that brings me so much joy. I went to a doctor. He said, you need surgery. I have nothing against surgery, but generally see it as a last resort. So I sought a second opinion. That doctor more or less did the same thing, and it was an afterthought. He said, maybe you should try yoga yoga. And Colleen and I were dating at the time. We weren't married yet. And she had a yoga practice. So I said, all right, let's give it a shot. So I tried some really light yoga in the morning and evening, nothing crazy, 5 to 10 minutes, very restorative. I started to feel better. And over the course of 6 months, I completely healed. And I made a lot of changes too. I started to look at my stress levels, my sleep, nutrition. I was a guy who thought nutrition was steak and martinis at the Palm Steakhouse. I consumed so much. My face is on the wall next to Adam Sandler and Joe Namath in Midtown Manhattan. That is insane.
Wow.
Still eat meat. Not as much. In fact, I had an incredible grass-fed bison burger last night.
Nice.
But back then I was devoid of the vegetables and very heavy on the alcohol. And so at any rate, made a number of changes. And it was very clear to me back then that true well-being, people had it wrong. I think you had on one hand, the word wellness was equated with the spa.
Right.
Anything that was a little bit holistic was just very crazy, and only preached the choir of people live in the west side of LA or Brooklyn or Boulder. And our belief was that true well-being was the marriage of Eastern and Western, and it was a blend of mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and environmental well-being. One word, MindBodyGreen, all connected. And that was the inspiration for the site, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, this has been, so basically she saved you. That's what I'm hearing here, is it was her yoga practice that helped start, and you did it. And now, so you owe her even more than you already did from the marriage and all the other stuff, because she actually, turns out she was one of the catalysts.
I owe everything to I owe everything to Colleen.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Now, Colleen,
and my mother. I got to include my mother too.
Okay, fair enough. So one of the things I have a question for you about, specifically to you, Colleen, is on the book, The Joy, the Well-Being, one of the things that is underlined is practical, right? And I've known you for a while, and I know that practicality is definitely something that you really live and die by, and feel like it's something that furthers people into the education that they're looking for. Why was it so important to include the word practical for folks?
Yeah, so one of the impetus of writing this book for us was when we looked at the wellness landscape, it was completely devoid of anything that was practical. So on the one hand, you're seeing all these biohacking bros with these intense morning protocols, these intense evening protocols.
Right.
I am a mother of 2 small kids, entrepreneur. I was like, I can't do this. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have what I would call Kardashian wellness, where it's pretty luxurious, a lot of different intricate routines. So I looked at those practices and I was like, I'm a mother of 2 and an entrepreneur, and I don't have time for this. And so we really wanted to underscore that, the best well-being is the well-being that you can actually do on a consistent basis. And we totally get all of the knocks with wellness right now and wanted to offer a plan that's doable, achievable, and that we actually incorporate into our own lives.
And I think in the 15 years we've had MindBodyGreen, we've seen such an advancement in the longevity space, lifespan, if you will. Yet so much of the tips are completely inaccessible. And, the lifespan is 1.0, that's extending years. And then there's the conversation on health span, which is extending years absent of disease, which is also very important. And then we like joy span. Let's extend the years, be healthy, and also
I love that.
enjoy it. Because if you're the healthiest, fittest person in your 90s, but your
Alone.
family doesn't like you, that's really not fun. And if we take a step back, laddering up to longevity, this is something that's top of mind for me. I'm 49. Men in my family have a terrible history here. Father died of heart disease in his 40s. One grandfather died of cancer in his 40s. The other grandfather also succumbed to heart disease in his 40s. And so with two little girls, this became really top of mind. And I'm the guy who does all the testing. I've done the genetics testing. I do blood work twice a year where I do 30 plus vials of blood. I'm wearing a Whoop. I'm wearing the Aura. We sleep on the 8 Sleep. And to me, it became crystal clear that there were some practices that we could all incorporate that don't eat up our entire life, and that there were some really practical takeaways. Because let's get real, when life happens, when you're busy with a family or a business, you're not going to take 2 hours to do your morning sunlight, sauna, hot, cold routine. And look, there's a lot of good there, and we can talk about that, but you got to find things that fit into your life. We believe in editing, not necessarily adding or deleting. And it's a shift from the mindset from one of a scarcity to abundance. And that was really important to us. And when going gets tough, you're going to ditch practices that don't bring you joy. And that's a big thesis of ours. And there's so much science, and there's so many practices and protocols that you can choose from that don't take a lot of time, that you can integrate to your life. And that was really the inspiration for this book. Give people the tools.
Well, first of all, I love the practicality aspect of it, and also I wanted to make a comment. I was going over it again this morning just to refresh myself, and I love how the first chapter you describe what you mean by well-being, which I thought was really important, but then you got right to it. Breathe is chapter number 2, and sleep is chapter number 3. And I'm like, yahoo! People who get it, and it's so important. So thank you for recognizing it in the early stages.
Yeah, look, we breathe 20,000+ times a day. We're doing it anyway. We might as well
do it right.
Try to do it correctly, because most of us are not doing it right, and that means we're mouth breathing, and there's a downstream effect. It's not good for our immune system, cardiovascular health, the list goes on, and that's something you can consciously work on, and you're doing it anyway. The big objection to health and wellness is I don't have the time, I don't have the resources. Guess what? If you're not breathing, we've got a bigger problem.
Much bigger issue.
And as it relates to sleep, you can go a week missing a workout. You can go a week without getting the right number of fruits and veggies. Right. If you miss a week of sleep, you're going to end up in a really bad state.
In a straitjacket.
Don't I know it? Now, I want to talk to actually Colleen for a second, because I know that you personally have had some struggles with sleep in your past. And so when you were working on this chapter and just thinking about your historic past, tell us a little bit more about how much sleep means to you personally and why you wanted to include it so early on.
Yeah, sleep is deeply personal to me, and I've been on a lifelong sleep journey and will continue to be on, that journey probably for the rest of my life. Is something that I need to be thoughtful and intentional about in my life. But when I was at my first job, I had a really scary incident with sleep where I was really nervous for an upcoming presentation. It was in front of all the leadership there, and probably like 50 people, and I just started spiraling on it, out of control. And at the time, I had really bad sleep etiquette. I would, drink late at night like someone in their early 20s does. And I don't think I really understood the fundamentals of sleep. After a couple of nights of really not being able to sleep, I did end up in the ER. And the doctor there gave me a Xanax, which work to reset my sleep. But that was where my education of sleep like started and stopped in that particular incident, which is such a tragedy because it could have been a great learning opportunity to really get on the sleep journey. And so sleep is something that I'm always very thoughtful and intentional about. And I'm so glad that, this conversation around sleep fitness is getting the right amount of prominence and airtime as it is our mental fitness and our physical fitness.
Thanks to you.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate that. But it's also thanks to you. And thanks for sharing that, Colleen. It's so fascinating because, of course, I hear some pretty amazing stories about sleep on a fairly regular basis. But it's always important for us to really understand what a root issue it is. And you can't have mind, body, or green without sleep, right? It's pretty tough to do. And I think you both know that. Jay, when you were in Columbia and playing basketball, was there a time where the trainers or the coaches ever talked to you about getting better sleep, or did it ever come across? Because that might have been a little while ago. I'm not aging you here, but I don't even know if they had those kind of
I'll age
thoughts.
myself. It was, 26 years ago. Those conversations were never had.
Right.
It's astonishing how much we did not know about nutrition, sleep, all the above. We've come such a long way. And, I think unfortunately my routine back then, in retrospect, my father passed away suddenly when I was 19 and
Right.
my way of dealing with it, I drank, and I drank a lot in college. Unfortunately binge drinking in college, I think, has decreased over the years, but unfortunately back then, far too common. And I think that was the way of numbing the pain. And so I would often go out and drink and, just be exhausted at 3 or 4 a.m.
Right.
and pass out, and then wake up at 2 p.m.
Right.
and go to basketball practice, maybe class, probably not. And that was how I slept. I've never really had a problem sleeping per se.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think I knew how good sleep could be until I started measuring it, until I became conscious of, my bedtime routine, everything from meal timing, size of meal, alcohol, dessert, to even my latest discovery. I did a Pernuvo scan, and apparently I've had a massively deviated septum my entire life, and I have nasal valve collapse. So I'll do a visual for if anyone's watching on YouTube.
Right.
My
The
nose
whole thing
just collapses,
collapses
and
in.
I've always been a little, even though I sleep okay, a little light on REM. So I got nasal strips, game changing.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? Just being able to breathe
Yeah.
while you're sleeping can actually help you get into higher quality sleep. A lot of people think, oh, I want to change his breathing because he snores or something like that. But what you actually did was change the quality of your sleep by letting more air in, which is kind of remarkable.
Comes back to breathing again.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's why it's the second chapter in the book. All right, now one of the concepts that you lay out in the book is about being the CEO of your own health. And I really like that kind of framework. Help me understand what you guys mean by that.
I think it's just such an empowering mindset that we have the
I agree.
ability to impact our destiny. And, we have wonderful members of our, health and well-being orchestra, whether they're practitioners, whether they're doctors, nurses, online resources. But at the end of the day, it's kind of incumbent on us to be the conductor of this orchestra. And, I think there's this ability of like intuition that we need to bring to it as well, in terms of knowing your body, knowing your lived experience, to really advocate for yourself, to know when you're, not thriving, even if the blood work's okay and if the markers look okay, and to really advocate for the vibrancy that we all want to have in our life.
It's a message of empowerment. It's a message of accountability. Doctors are incredible people. They're also humans.
Yep.
Some of them have godlike qualities at times, and others are very flawed and make mistakes. And ultimately, it's your body, and you are the decision maker. And we want people to get educated. Education is empowerment. Get educated, ask questions, get second opinions, but ultimately it's on you. Doctors do not dictate your destiny, neither do your genes. We know that through lifestyle modifications,
Absolutely.
you can turn on and off how genes express themselves. And I think that is it. Ultimately, it's a message of hope, and we want people to get educated.
It feels like this is kind of a good spot to look at the difference between wellness and well-being, because you guys keep talking about well-being, and that is different than this kind of global idea behind wellness. Let's double tap on that, or double click a little bit on what you mean by well-being, because I feel like that is such an important crux of the book.
Yeah, and I think wellness is more about these optimizations. Maybe you call them hacks, quick fixes. It's probably trend driven. Whereas well-being is this acknowledgement of this journey. It's not going to be going from a start to a finish line. Like, we are on a well-being journey for the rest of our lives, and really approaching it from this, mindset of abundance.
And it's kinder, it's gentler. On the subject of sleep, you're going to have bad nights, and that's okay.
Trust me, I know.
And whether it's, diet, nutrition, fitness, anything, you're going to fall off the wagon. Donuts are going to happen, and that's
Love
okay.
donuts.
And it's this idea of it's a journey. Be kind to yourself, and get back on. Move forward.
I love the whole overall attitude, and it is a message of hope. I was just thinking about what you guys are talking about, just kind of letting it kind of marinate in my head. And so many people, when they come to the doctor's office, they don't ask, how can I become exceptional, right? How can I have more joy in my life? What they say is, this hurts. Can you make that stop hurting? Or these test results say this. Can we maybe fix that? But nobody's going in there asking for a prescription for joy, right? And that's what you guys are advocating, is you're saying you can do that. If somebody came to me and they said, hey, Michael, I want to improve the quality of my sleep, I would say that makes intuitive sense to me. And that's, I think, what you're saying here is just improve the quality of your life. That's what I'm getting from you, is well-being, because it's a personal definition for you, and you can trade off different components based on what you want to do. Am I close?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can do so with a busy schedule. Again,
Right.
the biggest knock on our industry is I don't have the time, I don't have the resources. So everything we talk about in the book is low cost or no cost, and you can fit into almost micro moments in the day.
Absolutely.
And I love that you brought it back to this idea that it's up to you to kind of define what this life means, because I think when anyone is about to start a well-being journey, they kind of have to take that self-accountability to think, okay, what is actually going to have the biggest ROI on my own health and happiness, and start there. And so much of this journey does have to be self-directed in terms of defining and envisioning the life that you do want to live.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's just so fascinating when you start to give people the power, if you will, or engage them to understand that they can ask for these things, that they deserve these things in their lives. It's very interesting to see sort of how people do. Now, in the book, you said something that I really grabbed onto, which was, you said something about basically getting to 80% on a fairly regular basis, right? Versus 100%. And I love that. I don't want to go to 100. I'm old, okay? I'm 56. Like, I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. There's no universe I'm making it to 100%. But I love this idea, and it reminds me of an idea that I read about a while ago in Japanese philosophy when it comes to food, which was to only eat until you're about 80% full, right? And it feels like this is somewhat of a similar idea set in terms of, you got to give yourself some room, right? So help us understand this whole 80% well-being idea, because I really think it's important.
I think it starts with, I think National Quitters Day at the gym is January 13th. Changes a little bit every year, but I think
love that,
we
National Quitters Day.
have a habit. Yeah, that's the day when most people drop off their gym membership,
Yeah.
and it's sad. And I think the reason why is we get this idea in our head that we need to go all in, and we are not being practical about our families, our work commitments, or how much we actually like something, and then we end up quitting. And so I think going from 0 to 100 is virtually impossible. And I think it's more practical to take reasonable inventory of this is what I can do, this is what I enjoy, and I got to carve out some space. And I think that is a lifestyle versus a practice that is completely impractical, and that's why we're really failing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because what I see happen for example, at the gym is there's two types of people there. There are people who are overtraining and, doing 2 spin classes in a row and then hitting the weight rack. And then there are people who don't even have resistance on the bike and it's just kind of going like this, And you look at these two people and it's like, gosh, there's got to be a way to get us more kind of towards the middle and having an effect, but not trying to, over affect ourselves by doing something that we really shouldn't be doing. Do you guys do any tracking of any of your, I see you've got a Whoop, it looks like a Whoop strap on, right? And you got the Oura ring. So you guys are trackers. What do you think of the whole idea set behind tracking? Pros, cons, if you see them? I know I've seen some both pros and cons, but I'm curious from your perspective, what do you guys think about this whole Internet of Things and tracking stuff?
Jason should definitely speak to the pros, and I can take on another opinion.
Perfect. I love it.
So I think the pro for me is I think it can provide actionable insights. And I think the big watch out for people here is you need to look at the data and try to draw conclusions and be okay. This is back to be okay with having a good day. So for example, last night we had dinner with friends we hadn't seen in a long time. I had this massive grass-fed bison burger. I had dessert. It was super late. We finished dinner at 9:30. 9:30 usually I'm in bed. I'm getting my deep. The deep sleep has already started. So I knew I was going to be in the red on Whoop. I knew my Oura was going to be below 70, and sure enough, I woke up and I was right. And you know what? I was like, this is totally worth it. It was incredible. Can't do that every night, but I think also here what I love about there are actionable insights, and I'm able to tweak my routines accordingly. And I think what I also love about wearables, I love doing out of one of experiments, and I did one earlier this year where I was looking to really dramatically reduce my ApoB.
Right.
And that's a marker we talk about in the book. Anyone who's concerned about heart disease, absolutely get it checked.
It's huge.
So my ApoB was running a bit high. It was 110. So
wow.
I took this very seriously. And I did
especially with your family
test.
history.
Exactly. And so I did a test called Boston Heart, which I also think people should try out if they're concerned about how they absorb fat. We found that I am a hyper absorber of saturated fat, hyper absorber. Basically, sat fat comes in me and it goes straight to straight to the ApoB.
Wow.
And so I did an 8-week test where I eliminated specifically coconut oil and coconut milk, and I was having quite a lot of it. Sure. So the C16 fatty acid. And what was interesting, I do this experiment. I went pretty hardcore, consuming a lot of fish, still had meat, still had chicken, but really eliminated the sat fat.
Right.
What was interesting, my Oura and Whoop, everything started to go in the right direction. A week later,
wow.
Resting heart rate started to drop. HRV started to increase significantly, and I shared this. We can link to it maybe in my personal Instagram. I show all the data.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
I got the confirmation, which I appreciated. My body's responding. My RHR decreased significantly and HRV increased significantly. And then sure enough, 8 weeks later, I do the test. ApoB went to 71, 110 to 71.
You had a 40-point drop?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
that's insane.
my HRV went from 86 to 120.
Oh my God.
And my RHR went from 45 to 40.
Dude, that's incredible.
Get back to your question. I love wearables because it gave me actionable insights. And during this 8-week test, it gave me the confirmation that what I was doing was working.
Wow. That's pretty incredible.
And I agree that wearables can be so impactful to health. And I tend to like a 2-week sprint with a wearable to get that treasure trove of insights. And, for instance, when it comes to my sleep, I really needed the data to understand just how much alcohol does mess with my sleep to make some changes. I'm hypersensitive to it. But after that, I found myself obsessing over them, maybe ruminating. And also it would sometimes tell me the obvious of, okay, you have a horrible recovery score. Great. Now I feel like even more crap.
Right.
So I just found once I got those insights, I was in touch enough with my body to understand when I was having a good day, when I was having a bad day. And from a mental standpoint, for me, it's just better to take those insights, implement them into my life, and then, track again when I'm looking for more insights.
I agree with you. I have some patients who get too involved in the data and they kind of live and die by their data. And while I think it can be insightful, when somebody wakes up and they got a 73 on their aura, but they feel great, they're conflicted. You know what I'm saying? They're like, what just happened here?
Totally.
Like I don't get this. Or they had a horrible night's sleep and it gives them a 90 something. And then they're like, there's no universe I want to have another sleep like that again. So it just, there's a lot of that I think tends to happen, right? Are you about to show me your score?
Yeah, I'm 69. I'm 69 today, but I feel amazing because that burger was so good, Michael, and that glass of wine, I would.
But see, this is what I like is it's all about the personalization and the individuality of the data. So then you can make it actionable. And if you don't lean so hard on it, you don't like live and die by your data, which I think is probably what you guys are, thinking about. It's like, it's a great touch point, but, don't, change your entire mood over the fact that, you got a 62 on your Oura ring last night. Okay. Now, one other question that I had that I thought was really interesting, this was from the sleep chapter, of course. It said, be kind to yourself about sleep. So, I fully embrace this as an idea set, but it's always great to hear other people say it. But help me understand what you mean by it, because I know kind of what my definition is about it, but I'm very curious about yours.
So I very much acknowledge that this is a journey. Not every night of sleep is going to be perfect for me. And that I have to be gentle with myself when I wake up in the middle of the night and, need some help getting nudged back to sleep. I think when we put too stringent of expectations that every night we're going to, sleep through the night soundly, that then when we have, what is really just like natural ebbs and flows in terms of our body, our lives, we can beat ourselves up over it. Oh, yeah. And that then exacerbates the sleep cycle.
You're so right. I call this acceptance, right? So I turn to people all the time and I'm like, look, I'm the sleep doctor and I don't get, friggin' perfect sleep. So there's no universe where you should either, right? So, give yourself a break. Also, a lot of people in the middle of the night, they wake up in the middle of the night and when they can't return to sleep, they start giving themselves a really hard time. Like, oh, I should be able to do this by now. There's something wrong with me. Oh, tomorrow's going to suck. All these different things. And people don't understand that when you're thinking in the middle of the night, you're not really thinking, you're reacting in the middle of the night. And so emotion is kind of taken over those thoughts. And now, exactly as you said, Colleen, you ramp up that anxiety and now you really have a hard time falling back to sleep. So I just love the fact that you want people to be kind. And also that is kind of the theme throughout the book, if you really think about it, right? It's like, be practical, be kind, and receive joy. Have I missed something? Because that's what it seems like, and it seems pretty good message.
Yeah. Yeah, look, we think there's a rigidity in our space. And our belief is if you're going to be rigid about anything, be rigid about being flexible.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, well, it's just, it's so many people have kind of got their thing. And now whatever their trend is, that's the thing that's going to, provide a greater health for us all. Look, at the end of the day, the humans have existed for thousands of years. We didn't have all these kind of crazy things, and we did pretty okay. So I'm not as worried, like sleeping, eating, breathing, being outside and moving. I think if we get those four, I think we're probably in pretty decent shape all around. All right, so I'm a big fan of cold exposure, cold plunges, especially when it comes to stress and things like that. In the research in your book, what can you tell me more about cold plunges? Have you guys come across anything? Because I'll be really honest with you. While it feels really good and it makes my skin feel good and I feel like I've got some level of fortitude because I was able to make it through, I haven't been able to find a lot of data on the healthiness of it all. So have you guys come across anything, or what do you guys think about some of that stuff?
Neither have we. And this is an interesting example about us in that we're flexible. And so we hate the cold.
I know, me too.
Miami.
You live in Florida, for God's sake.
We don't ski. We don't do it.
Right.
And what we find in our space is oftentimes influencers or brands have a certain point of view and they double down on it and they don't change, and that's it. And I think something we've done over the course of years, we've always changed our views. And so at the time of writing this book, we're like, you know what? We don't like the cold. If it works for you, fantastic. There's some science there, but not for us, and that's okay. And so what happened after we wrote the book, I started looking at my testosterone, and I wanted to experiment with, see what we could do to boost it. And I'd seen on social media, because everything you read there is true, that cold exposure could potentially help. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do my own N of 1. And so I started doing the cold plunge, three times a week, anywhere from 11 to 15 minutes, 3 to 4 minute intervals, 45 to 50 degree range. One, I started to really enjoy it. Started to really like how I felt after. Got a sense of clarity, gave me an energy boost, and my testosterone started to go up. Interesting. And I think now I really like doing it, regardless of the testosterone. Right. And it's something I think it's symbolic of our views change. Yes. And that's okay. And unfortunately, that's not how most people operate in our world.
And I think, for everything with women, like we as women go through 9 lives with our different hormone fluctuations throughout the seasons of life. And I think that's where women really need to tune into what works for them. I have Raynaud's, which means my extremities get, purple when I'm exposed to cold water. I'm not getting anywhere near a cold plunge. And I'm just so grateful that there's people, who are starting to speak about even how when women cold plunge, they need to think about a different temperature than men, because our bodies are different. We have different needs. So I think it also goes back to that, how do you connect into your body and figure out what you really need to feel great?
And it's okay to change your mind on something.
Well, and I think that's really, I want to double tap on that, because I've been searching for some good stuff on cold plunge for sleep in particular, right? And you would think, well, there's probably not going to be a lot of data. I have one patient who actually in the middle of the night, if he has insomnia, will go jump into a cold plunge and then come back. Wow. And I know, it's crazy, right? And he found a study that showed that there was a small spike in melatonin when he does that. And he's one of these people that seems to work for. So I couldn't believe I was saying it, but I was like, okay, if that's what's going to, and maybe it's a lowering of his anxiety post that's helping with that. Maybe it's that his temperature gets super duper cold and then it slowly starts to rise back up and can be helpful there. Who the heck knows? But at the end of the day, it's amazing how individual practices, as long as they're done within the criteria of safety, can be very, very important, work very, very well. But I'm like you, Colleen, I hate the cold. I've asked my doctor 100 times if I have Raynaud's, because I feel like my fingers are turning purple every time I walk outside. And I live in Southern California, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about the weather there. So I get it, but I think it's important also to say that in the sleep world, we learn new things, and then we have to retract on old things. A great example of this is there was I just saw it in the newspaper today, a $1.1 billion fine has been levied against Respironics, the makers of the CPAP machine, because there's a piece of foam inside that appears to be carcinogenic. And they've had to recall something like 6 or 10 million units. It's a mess. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that CPAP is bad. It means, it just means that number one, we have to figure out who makes the best CPAP machine for you. But number two, maybe CPAP isn't the right intervention for you. You can try an oral appliance. You can try weight loss. You can try a whole host of different things to kind of get out there. So I think it's important for everybody to understand that research changes, and what used to be well is not well anymore, right? I mean, back in the day, you were healthy if you were having a 3-martini lunch and a prime rib, every day. That was considered healthy. So I love the fact that you're comfortable with change, but that you don't let it undermine the authority of what it is that you're asking people to do.
On that note, I do want to call out, and look, we're not proponents of consuming alcohol. However, if and we'll call out, if you don't drink, don't start. But if you do enjoy a drink, what we found is you're better off having that drink earlier. So if you want the martini, have it at lunch and not dinner. It will have less impact on your sleep.
That's 100% correct. And it will actually have less impact it might have more impact on your liver because you're not producing the enzymes during that period of time because it's not happy hour, right? Absolutely. All right. I got one or two more quick questions for you. You said in your book, the most important takeaway is any health changes you make have to be a joyful one. And I think we've talked about joy being through your book here, but I just want to double down on that again. Is that how you have people choose where to start? Like, do you say to yourself, is there an area that you enjoy doing something, and is that your first wellness jump-off point? Or are you telling people, hey, there's an area that you don't want to deal with, and that's where you should start? Like, how do you help them find their joy in those areas?
I think first you have to think about what's the highest ROI thing that you're trying to solve.
I like that.
If you look at, you can get overwhelmed by, there's so many pillars, but not all of them are going to be fine for you. You're going to be like, great, I'm breathing fine. I really need to think about sleep or movement. And it's so individual to everyone. But we do believe that, to have a change be sustainable, there has to be some joy in that process. Right. That could be as simple as like, hey, I love the sheets I bought for my bed. Right. To this is the type of workout that really like sings to my soul. This is the type of food I like to eat. Oh, and bonus that it's healthy. But just given the loneliness epidemic that we're in, the fact that like we are at historic levels of unhappiness, I think we really need to bring the fun and joy back into the well-being conversation.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think you're right. I think joy is what makes it last, right? Like, because if you don't like doing it, like, you see these people, like it's pouring down rain outside and they're out there running, there's no joy there, right? They're just trying to log miles on their log sheet. You know what I'm saying? Like, unless they're just so obsessed, and at which point, like, run inside for God's sakes, But so like, I agree with you. People have got to get more joy out of all of this. And I also want to just say thank you to both of you for this conversation. This has been wonderful. The book is phenomenal, okay? Like, The Joy of Well-Being. And I really think people need to understand that the joy and the well-being are the important parts of the book. And of course, the underlining of the practical, which brings in that logical aspect to say, hey, do it if you can, make it fun, have a good time with it. I really think this is the attitude that we should be taking across all of health, not just in well-being side of things, but across all of health. So I wanted to say thank you both for all that you've done and for your contribution to the wellness community and the well-being community, because that's kind of what you guys are going for. 15 years, that's a pretty amazing feat for MindBodyGreen. So again, thank you both for putting all this information together, getting it out there, and getting it to us in a readable, practical format. I can't thank you all enough. And it was great that you agreed to allow me to have you as our second book for the Book of the Month Club. We certainly appreciate it. You're in good stead. Jim Quick was before you for his book, Limitless. And I know you guys are big Jim Quick fans as well. So it's just great to have this opportunity. And again, thank you again. If people want to learn more about either the book or MindBodyGreen or about the two of you, where can they learn more about the both of you and get more information?
Sure. So the book's available at Amazon.com and all major book resellers. You go to thejoyofwellbeing.com. MindBodyGreen, we're everywhere. MindBodyGreen.com. MindBodyGreen handle on all social media. I'm also the host of the MindBodyGreen podcast, and Colleen and I are just at Jason Wachob and at Colleen Wachob across social media. So I think that's it. Well,
again, thank you guys. I know that my fans are going to eat this up. Again, I can't recommend this book enough, and I'm not a big overall wellness kind of well-being book lover. This is an important book. So I'm serious. I mean, look, I get a lot of books that show up in my mailbox all the time. And so at the end of the day, I scan them, and this one I actually read. So I just want to say thank you all for what you have put out, and I'm highly recommending this to all of my folks out there. This is not going to put you to sleep. This is going to teach you how to be well. Take care, everyone. Dr. Michael Breus, the sleep doctor, and my friend the Wachobs from MindBodyGreen, we're all wishing everyone sweet dreams.